The mountain had kept its secret for 4,000 years. Dr. Kim Yuna stared at her equipment screen with wide eyes. The numbers made no sense. Deep beneath the rocky ground of Gangwon Province, something was producing an energy signature that should not exist. Her machines could not identify it. Her theories could not explain it. And yet there, it was a pulse of power, slow and steady, like a heartbeat. "This is impossible," she whispered. Her team gathered around her in the cold morning air. They had come here to study earthquake patterns, not to discover ancient mysteries. But science did not care about their plans. Science only cared about truth. Lee Min-ho, the security chief assigned to protect the research team, looked over her shoulder. He was a tall man with serious eyes and a soldier's posture. "What are we looking at?" "I do not know," Yuna admitted. "But whatever it is, it has been down there for a very long time. Maybe longer than human civilization itself." The government told them to stop. They received orders to pack up and leave, to forget what they had found. Some secrets, the officials said, were better left buried. Yuna ignored them. 3 weeks later, her team broke through into a chamber that should not exist. The walls were made of a metal that no scientists could name. Strange symbols covered every surface, glowing with soft golden light. The air inside was warm and fresh, as if someone had been breathing there just moments ago. At the center of the chamber stood a sphere of pure light, and inside that sphere, frozen in time, floated a man. He wore armor in an ancient Korean style. But the metal moved like water, shifting and flowing even as he slept. His face was young, perhaps 30 years old, but there was something about him that felt old. Very old, as if the weight of centuries rested on his closed eyes. "Who is he?" Min-ho asked quietly. Even the soldier felt the need to whisper in this sacred place. Yuna shook her head slowly. "I think the better question is, what is he?" The government sent Choi Hana within days. She was one of Earth's best language experts, brought in to study the symbols on the walls. What she found made her hands tremble as she wrote her reports. "These are not human symbols," she told Yuna and Min-ho one evening. "They belong to a universal language, something created by beings far older than humanity. I have seen similar patterns in ancient ruins on Mars and the moons of Jupiter. Whoever wrote this wanted anyone in the galaxy to understand." "What does it say?" Yuna asked. Tana took a deep breath. "It speaks of a guardian, a protector created by a dying cosmic being to watch over the seed world. It says that when the stars bring danger, the guardian will wake. It says that Earth is not alone. It never was." The words hung in the air like a prophecy. None of them knew that the prophecy was about to come true. The Valari arrived. On a cold Tuesday morning there, ships appeared in Earth's solar system without warning. Massive vessels of dark metal, bristling with weapons that human minds could barely comprehend. There were 12 of them in the first wave, one larger than a city. Humanity had achieved interstellar travel 50 years ago. They had built small colonies on nearby planets and sent exploration ships to distant stars. But they had never made contact with intelligent alien life. They had believed foolishly that the galaxy was empty. The galaxy was not empty. The galaxy was full of hunters. High Sovereign Rin ruled the Valari Dominion from a throne made of conquered worlds. Her empire stretched across 10,000 star systems. She had crushed civilizations far older and more advanced than humanity. To her, Earth was nothing. A small blue world filled with primitive creatures who had barely learned to leave their own atmosphere. Commander Thane led the scout fleet. He was a warrior who had never known defeat, and he did not expect to find one here. His orders were simple: claim Earth for resource extraction. If the natives resisted, destroy them. The message came to every screen on Earth at the same moment. Thane's cold face looked down at billions of terrified humans. "People of this world," he said, his voice translated into every language. "Your planet now belongs to the Valari Dominion. You will surrender all resources and submit to processing. Resistance will result in extinction. You have one rotation of your world to comply." United Earth Council met in emergency session. Leaders argued and shouted and begged for solutions. Earth's small defense fleet was nothing compared to the alien armada. Their weapons were toys. Their shields were paper. There was no hope. Lee Minho received orders to evacuate the research site. The tomb and its sleeping guardian were no longer priorities. Survival was all that mattered now. But as he prepared to leave, something strange happened. The golden sphere in the center of the chamber began to flicker. Yuna noticed it first. She stopped in the middle of packing her equipment and stared. The light that had remained steady for thousands of years was now pulsing faster. The symbols on the walls grew brighter. Something is happening, she breathed. Above them, the sky turned to fire. The Valari had grown tired of waiting. Commander Thane ordered the first bombardment to begin. Beams of terrible energy fell from the heavens, striking cities across the globe. Buildings vanished. Mountains crumbled. Millions of lives ended in seconds. In the chamber below, the man in the sphere opened his eyes. They burned with the light of dying stars. Park Tae had been dreaming of his village, of rice fields and quiet mornings, of a world that no longer existed, but the dreams had turned to nightmares. He felt every death above him like a knife in his soul. Men, women, children, their final moments of terror flowed through his consciousness. Like a river of pain, the cosmic being that had chosen him 4,000 years ago had given him many gifts. Strength beyond measure, life beyond death, power beyond understanding. But it had also given him a curse. He could feel humanity dying, and that feeling, that unbearable weight of innocent lives being snuffed out like candles in a storm, burned away the last chains of his ancient sleep. The sphere shattered. The Guardian was awake, and he was angry. Park Tae stood in the center of the shattered sphere, his chest heaving with each breath. Golden light still clung to his skin like morning dew. His ancient armor shifted and moved across his body, alive and aware, responding to emotions he had not felt in 4,000 years: pain, rage, purpose. The three humans in the chamber stared at him with terror and wonder mixed, together on their faces. He did not recognize their clothing or their strange devices. The language they spoke was Korean, but it had changed so much that he could barely understand their words. But he understood their fear. That was a language that never changed. The ground shook again. Dust fell from the ceiling. Somewhere far above, the world was burning. Kim Yuna stepped forward slowly, her hands raised to show she meant no harm. "Can you understand me?" she asked, speaking carefully. "We are not your enemies. We need your help." Tae looked at her. His eyes were not normal eyes anymore. They glowed with inner fire, and when he blinked, Yuna saw galaxies spinning in their depths. Whatever this man had been 4,000 years ago, he was something else now. Something more than human. Choi Hannah moved to stand beside Yuna. She pointed to the symbols on the walls, and then to Tae, trying to build a bridge of understanding. "Guardian," she said, using the word from the ancient texts. "You are the Guardian. Earth is in danger. Beings from the stars are killing our people." Something flickered across Tae's face. Understanding. Recognition. He spoke for the first time. His voice was rough from 4,000 years of silence, but his words carried power that made the air tremble. "How many have died?" Hannah's throat tightened. She looked at her communication device, checking the terrible numbers that updated every second. "Millions," she whispered. "They are destroying our cities. We cannot stop them." Tae closed his eyes. His hands formed fists at his sides. The armor on his body responded to his emotions, growing darker, sharper, more dangerous. When he opened his eyes again, there was no confusion left in them. Only cold determination. "Show me the way to the surface," he said. Lee Minho stepped between Tae and the tunnel that led upward. The soldier's hand rested on his weapon, though some deep part of him knew it would be useless. "Wait," he said. "I do not doubt what you are. But you have been asleep for thousands of years. The world has changed. The enemies above have weapons that can crack mountains and burn oceans. What can one man do against that?" Tae looked at the soldier. For a moment, his hard expression softened. He saw something familiar in Minho's stance. The the willingness to stand against impossible odds, the refusal to abandon duty even when death was certain. Tay had been such a man once, long ago. "You're brave," Tay said quietly. "Your ancestors would be proud." He placed a hand on Minho's shoulder. The touch was gentle, but Minho felt power flowing through it, like an ocean pressing against a dam. "The being that made me what I am was older than your son," Tay continued. "It had watched civilizations rise and fall across 1,000 galaxies. It had seen wars that burned entire star systems to ash. It chose your world to protect because it saw something beautiful here, something worth saving." He looked up toward the surface. "These creatures that attack you now, they are children playing with fire. They do not know what sleeps beneath your mountains. They do not know what waits for those who harm this world." His eyes blazed brighter. "I will teach them." He walked past Minho toward the tunnel. The soldier did not try to stop him again. The journey to the surface took only minutes. Tay moved through rock and stone as if they were water, his body passing through solid matter without slowing. The others followed through the tunnel his passage created, struggling to keep up. When they emerged into the open air, they emerged into hell. The sky was red with fire and smoke. The beautiful mountains of Gangwon province were scarred with craters where Valari weapons had struck. In the distance, a city burned. Alien dropships descended through the clouds, carrying soldiers to claim the wounded Earth. A Valari landing zone had been established less than a kilometer away. Hundreds of alien warriors moved between their ships, organizing equipment and preparing for the occupation they believed was already won. Yuna grabbed Tay's arm. "There are too many of them. And more in orbit. Thousands more. You cannot fight them all." Tay looked at the alien soldiers. He looked at the burning sky. He looked at the dead land that had once been green and alive. "Watch me," he said. He began to walk toward the enemy. His steps were calm and steady. He did not run. He did not hide. He walked like a man taking a morning stroll, as if the army of alien conquerors before him were nothing more than a mild inconvenience. The Valari spotted him quickly. Their sensors screamed warnings about the energy readings coming from this single figure, but their commanders laughed at the alerts. One human walking alone toward an entire invasion force? It was suicide. Commander Thane watched from his ship in orbit. When his soldiers reported the approaching human, he felt a flicker of curiosity. Perhaps this was a leader come to surrender. Perhaps it was a warrior choosing death over slavery. Either way, it would be brief entertainment. "Let him come," Thane ordered. "And when he is close enough, kill him." The Valari soldiers raised their weapons. Plasma rifles charged with a high-pitched whine. Energy cannons locked onto the lone figure walking through the smoke and ash. They fired. 100 beams of destructive light converged on Park Tay. Each one carried enough power to vaporize a tank. Together, they should have erased him from existence, leaving nothing but a shadow. Burned into the ground, the light struck him, and then it simply stopped. The beams hidden invisible, a barrier around Tay's body, and dissolved into nothing. Sparks of harmless energy scattered in all directions. He did not slow down. He did not flinch. He kept walking. In orbit, Commander Thane leaned forward in his chair. The laughter died in his throat. The Valari soldiers on the ground began to panic. They fired again and again. They used their heaviest weapons. They called for support. Nothing worked. Park Tay stopped walking. He stood in the center of the landing zone, surrounded by enemies, and he raised one hand toward the sky. "You came here believing this world was weak," he said. His voice carried across the battlefield, heard by every Valari soldier, every human survivor, every sensor in orbit. "You came believing there was no one to stop you." He closed his raised hand into a fist. The nearest dropship crumpled like paper being crushed by an invisible giant. Metal screamed. Engines exploded. The ship collapsed into a ball of twisted wreckage and fell from the sky. "You were wrong," Tay said, and then the real destruction began. The Valari had conquered 10,000 worlds. They had crushed empires that stretched across galaxies. They had weapons that could crack planets and armies that numbered in the billions. None of it mattered. Park. Tay moved through their forces like a storm moving through dry leaves. He did not run, or jump, or dodge. He simply walked, steady and unstoppable. And everything around him died. When soldiers fired at him, their weapons melted in their hands. When vehicles charged toward him, they folded inward like paper boxes being crushed by unseen fingers. When aircraft dove from the sky to attack, invisible forces swatted them down like insects. Commander Thane watched from orbit, his hands gripping the arms of his command chair so tightly that his claws drew blood from the metal. This was impossible. This should not be happening. One creature, one single entity, was tearing through his invasion force as if they were nothing. Focus all ground forces on the target, he ordered. Every weapon, every soldier. Destroy it now. Hundreds of Valari warriors converged on TA's position. They came with plasma cannons and energy blades and explosive charges. They came with the fury of an empire that had never known defeat. Tay stood still and let them come. When they were close enough to see, the ancient fire burning in his eyes, he spoke a single word in a language older than Earth itself. The word carried power. The word carried judgment. The ground around him exploded upward. Rocks and soil became weapons, spinning outward in a circle of destruction that swept through the enemy ranks. Soldiers flew through the air like dolls thrown by an angry child. Vehicles flipped and crashed and burned. In seconds, the area around Tay was empty. Only wreckage remained. Thane's jaw tightened. He had not reached his position by accepting defeat. If ground forces could not stop this creature, then he would use the power of his warships. Prepare orbital bombardment, he commanded. Maximum yield. Target the energy signature on the surface. His crew hesitated. Orbital bombardment at maximum yield would destroy everything within 10 kilometers. Their own troops, their landing zone, all of it would be erased. Do it, Thane growled. Whatever that thing is, it dies now. High above Earth, 3 Valari warships positioned themselves in a triangle formation. Energy built in their weapons, systems enough power to vaporize a small moon. The air itself seemed to scream as the beam descended from the heavens. A pillar of pure destruction fell toward Park Tay on the distant hillside. Kim Yuna watched through binoculars, her heart frozen in her chest. Lee Minho stood beside her, his face pale. Choi Hana had fallen to her knees, unable to look away. No one can survive that? Minho whispered. Nothing can survive that. The beam struck. The world turned white for 3 heartbeats. There was nothing but light and heat and the roar of planets dying. The ground shook so violently that mountains trembled. The air itself caught fire. Then, slowly, the light began to fade. Yuna raised her binoculars with shaking hands. She expected to see a crater. She expected to see nothing but glass and ash where the Guardian had stood. Instead, she saw him. Park Tay stood exactly where he had been before. Around him, the ground was burned and melted, transformed into a lake of glowing stone. But he was untouched. His armor gleamed in the dying light. His eyes blazed brighter than ever, and in his outstretched hand, he held a sphere of compressed destruction, the entire power of the orbital strike. Caught and contained like a firefly in a jar. Possible, Minho breathed. That is impossible. In orbit, Commander Thane stared at his sensors in disbelief. The target was still active. The target had absorbed an attack that should have killed anything in the galaxy. The target was now looking up at his fleet with eyes full of cold anger. Tay raised his hand toward the sky. The sphere of captured energy pulsed once, twice, and then shot upward like a reverse meteor. The beam returned to its senders. 3 Valari warships existed for 1 more second. Then the light consumed them. When it faded, only scattered atoms remained. Drifting through space where vessels of war had once been, across the galaxy, sensors detected the impossible energy release. Warning signals flashed on 1,000 worlds. The Valari Dominion received emergency transmissions from their scout fleet. Something on Earth was destroying their warships. Something that defied all known science. On the Dominion's capital world, Elder Corys watched the reports with ancient eyes. He was older than most Valari could imagine. He had studied histories that others had forgotten, read texts that others had dismissed as myth. He knew what was happening on Earth. His hands trembled as he rushed to the throne room. High Sovereign Rin sat on her seat of power, surrounded by advisors who screamed about the impossible losses in the Earth system. Silence, Rin commanded, and the room fell quiet. Her eyes found Corey's. "Look like you have seen a ghost, Elder Speak." Corey's bowed low. "Worse than a ghost, my sovereign. I know what destroyed our ships. I know what waits on that small blue world." He straightened, and his voice shook with fear. "Earth has a warden, a guardian created by the first ones before they vanished from the universe. The legend said they were all dead. The legend said the last one fell 1,000,000 years ago." His eyes met the sovereign's. The legends were wrong. Rin's face showed no emotion, but her claws dug into her throne. "One creature. You expect me to believe one creature destroyed 3 of my warships?" "Not one creature," Corys corrected quietly. "One weapon. The first ones did not create the wardens to fight armies. They created them to fight gods. Our empire, our fleets, our entire civilization, to a true warden. We are nothing but insects buzzing around a bonfire." The throne room fell into terrified silence. On Earth, Parkte lowered his hand. The Valari landing zone was gone. The enemy soldiers were gone. The immediate threat was ended, but he knew more would come. He could feel them gathering in the cold darkness of space. Thousands of ships, millions of warriors, an empire that had never retreated from anything. He looked at the burning sky and waited. Let them come, he thought. Let them bring everything they have. They would learn. They would all learn Earth was not prey. Earth was protected. High Sovereign Rin did not believe in retreat. Her ancestors had built the Valari Dominion through blood and fire. They had never turned away from a challenge. They had never admitted weakness. She would not be the first. "Mobilize the Grand Fleet," she commanded. Her voice echoed through the throne room like thunder. "Every warship, every soldier, every weapon we possess, we will show this guardian what happens to those who defy the Dominion." Elder Corey stepped forward, his old face twisted with fear. "My sovereign, please." The ancient texts warn against angering a warden. The first ones created them to protect worlds they considered precious. "If we continue this attack, the first ones are dead," Rin interrupted coldly. "Their guardians are relics of a forgotten age. I do not care how powerful this creature is. Nothing survives the Grand Fleet. Nothing." She turned to her commanders. 2,000 warships. I want them at Earth within 3 cycles. Burn that world to its core if you must. But I want that guardian's corpse at my feet. The commanders bowed and left to prepare for war. Corys remained, watching his sovereign with sad, knowing eyes. He had lived long enough to recognize the beginning of the end when he saw it. On Earth. Parkte sat on a hillside and looked at the stars. The fires had finally stopped. The surviving Valari had fled back to their ships, and those ships had retreated beyond the moon. But they would return. He could feel their hatred and fear pulsing through space like poison in water. Dr. Kim Yuna approached him carefully. In the days since his awakening, she had become something like a bridge between the ancient guardian and the modern world. She brought him food he did not need and water he did not want. She sat with him in silence when words seemed useless. Tonight, she brought questions. "Who are you?" she asked softly. "Before all this? Before you became what you are?" Tay was silent for a long moment. His glowing eyes dimmed slightly, as if he was looking backward through time to a life that no longer existed. "I was a soldier," he finally said. "A simple man who protected his village from bandits and wild animals. Nothing special. Nothing important." "Something must have been special about you," Yuna pressed gently. "Otherwise, why would a cosmic being choose you out of all the humans on Earth?" Tay's lips curved into something that was almost a smile. "I asked the same question once. The being who chose me, I never knew its true name. It came to Earth, wounded and dying, hunted by enemies that had chased it across galaxies. It hid beneath these mountains and prepared to die alone." He picked up a small stone and rolled it between his fingers. But before it died, it wanted to give its power to someone. Anyone. It reached out with its mind and touched every human soul on the planet, searching for something it could trust with its legacy. And it found you. It found a man dying in the snow. Tay's voice grew distant. I had led a group of bandits away from my village. I killed many of them, but they killed me too. Or they thought they did. I lay there in the cold, my life bleeding out of me, and I thought only of the people I had saved. Not of revenge. Not of anger, just gratitude that my death had meant something. He looked at Yuna. The being told me later that my soul burned brighter in that moment than any it had ever seen. Not because I was special, because I was at peace with giving everything for others. It gave you its power. It gave me everything. Its strength. Its knowledge. Its endless life. Tay's eyes blazed brighter, and it gave me a purpose. Protect the seed world, it said. Protect humanity until they become what they are meant to be. Yuna felt tears building in her eyes. What are we meant to be? I do not know. Neither did the being that chose me, but it saw potential in your species that made it willing to die for your protection. And I have seen that potential too, in the thousands of years I dreamed beneath these mountains. He stood and looked at the sky. Your people fight and suffer and make terrible mistakes. But you also create beauty and love and wonder. You are worth saving. The ground trembled. Choi Hannah came running up the hillside, her face pale with terror. They are coming. The sensors have detected a massive fleet entering the solar system. Thousands of ships. More than we can count. Tay nodded slowly. He had felt them approaching for hours. The Valari had sent everything. Their entire grand fleet, all their power, focused on destroying one world and one guardian. Stay here, he told Yuna. Stay on the planet where you are safe. Safe. Lee Minho had joined them, his military instincts screaming warnings. Those ships will burn the atmosphere. They will crack the crust. The planet will not survive this attack. Tay placed a hand on the soldier's shoulder. The planet will survive. I give you my word. The beings who made me designed me to protect worlds. That means protecting the world itself, not just the people on it. He stepped away from them and rose into the air. The ancient armor flowed around him, growing and changing, becoming something terrible and beautiful. Wings of golden light spread from his back. A crown of stars formed above his head. For the first time, the humans saw the Guardian not as a man, but as what he truly was, a weapon forged by cosmic gods to stand against the darkness between stars. Watch the sky, Tay said. His voice boomed like thunder across mountains. And remember what you see. Remember what humanity means to the universe. He shot upward like a meteor in reverse, climbing higher and higher until he vanished from sight in space. The grand fleet of the Valari Dominion spread across the darkness like a cloud of death. 2,000 warships, each one bristling with weapons capable of destroying continents. Millions of soldiers waited in their holds, ready to descend upon Earth and crush any resistance. Commander Thane had survived the first encounter. He stood on the bridge of the Dominion's flagship, watching as his sensors tracked the single energy signature rising from the planet below. One creature, he muttered. They send one creature to fight an empire. But his voice shook as he spoke. The Guardian appeared in space, like a small sun. Golden light blazing against the endless black. He floated before the approaching Armadawan figure, against thousands of ships. Tay looked at the fleet that had come to destroy his world. He felt no fear. He felt no doubt. He felt only the weight of his purpose pressing against his soul like a mountain. You were given a chance to leave, he said. His voice carried through the vacuum of space, touching every mind and every ship. You chose war instead. Very well, he spread his arms wide. Learn what war truly means. The battle lasted less than an hour. Ships exploded. Shields shattered. Weapons meant to destroy worlds turned against their owners. The Guardian moved through the fleet like a ghost of vengeance. It's untouchable and unstoppable. When it was over, less than 300 ships remained. They fled in all directions, scattering across the galaxy. Carrying tales of impossible destruction and unstoppable power, the grand fleet of the Velari Dominion, the greatest military force in known space, had been broken by one being and across 1,000 worlds. The oppressed and conquered began to whisper a single word: hope. The galaxy had never seen anything like it. News spread faster than light itself. Traders carried the story from system to system. Refugees whispered it in hidden places. Military commanders discussed it in fearful voices behind closed doors. Earth had been attacked by the Velari's grand fleet, 2,000 warships, the greatest military force in known space. And Earth had won, not through technology, not through alliances, not through clever tactics or desperate sacrifice. One being had done it. One guardian, awakened from ancient sleep, had torn through the Velari armada like a storm through paper. Ships that had conquered empires were reduced to floating wreckage. An empire that had ruled for 10,000 years was suddenly mortal. High Sovereign Rin sat on her throne and stared at nothing. Around her, advisors argued and shouted and demanded action, but she heard none of it. She was thinking about the reports from the surviving ships. She was thinking about the descriptions of what the Guardian had done to her fleet. He had not killed every ship. He had let some escape. That terrified her more than anything else. A creature powerful enough to destroy. Her entire grand fleet had chosen to show mercy. That meant he was not a mindless weapon. He was intelligent, strategic. He wanted survivors to carry the message home. The message was simple. Earth was not to be touched. For the first time in her 1,000-year reign, Rin gave an order that tasted like ash in her mouth. Recall all forces. We are withdrawing from the Earth system. Until further notice, that world is forbidden territory. The Velari Dominion did not surrender, but they retreated. And for a species that had never retreated from anything, that was almost the same thing. Elder Corys watched the order go out across the Empire. He felt no satisfaction. He felt only relief, mixed with a deep and ancient fear. The Wardens were supposed to be extinct. The first ones were supposed to be gone forever. But one Guardian had survived, sleeping beneath Earth's mountains, waiting for the moment when he was needed. Were there others? On other worlds? Corys did not know, but he suspected the galaxy was about to become a very different place. On Earth, the celebrations lasted for days. Billions of people had died in the initial attack. Cities lay in ruins. The scars of bombardment would take generations to heal, but humanity had survived. Against all odds, against an enemy they could not hope to defeat. They had survived, and they had a protector. Park-Tay returned to Earth quietly, without fanfare or celebration. He landed on the same hillside where he had spoken with Dr. Kim Yuna, and he sat down on the grass as if nothing had happened. As if he had not just shattered the most powerful empire in the galaxy, Yuna found him there, watching the sunset. She sat beside him without speaking. Words seemed small after what she had witnessed. "It is beautiful," Tay said finally. "I had forgotten how beautiful Earth could be." "Saved it," Yuna replied softly. "You saved all of us." Tay shook his head. "I protected it." "There is a difference. Saving would mean you were helpless without me. But humans are not helpless. You survived for thousands of years before I woke. You've built civilizations. You reached the stars. You are stronger than you know." He looked at her with ancient eyes. "The being that chose me saw that strength. That is why it gave everything to protect your world. Not because humans are weak, but because humans have the potential to become something magnificent." "What happens now?" Yuna asked. "Now the galaxy knows Earth exists. They know humanity is here. Some will fear you because of me. Others will want to test you despite me. And eventually, threats will come that even I cannot stop alone." He stood and looked at the stars beginning to appear in the darkening sky. "I am a guardian, not a god. I can protect you from armies and empires, but I cannot protect you from yourselves. If humanity is to survive and grow, you must become strong enough to stand on your own. How long do we have?" "Time enough, I hope. Time to learn. Time to build. Time to become what you are meant to be. He turned back to her. I will help where I can. I will teach what I know. But the future of humanity must be written by human hands, not guided by ancient protectors. Then weeks. Then months. The United Earth Council reformed from the ashes of the old government. They built new defenses. They studied the technology left behind by the Valari. They reached out to other species, cautiously building relationships with neighbors who had once ignored them. And through it all, the Guardian watched. Park Tae did not seek power or authority. He refused all titles and rejected all honors. He was a soldier, he said, not a king. His duty was to protect, not to rule. When leaders came to him for guidance, he gave it freely. When threats appeared at the edge of the solar system, he dealt with them quietly. When children looked at him with wonder in their eyes, he smiled and ruffled their hair like a kind uncle. But sometimes, late at night, Yuna would find him standing alone on the hillside, looking at the stars with an expression she could not read. Was it sadness? Loneliness? The weight of centuries pressing down on a mortal's shoulders? One night, she asked him directly, "Do you ever wish you could rest? That you could just be a normal person again?" Tae was silent for a long time. When he spoke, his voice was soft. Every day, every moment, the being that made me gave me great power, but it also gave me great burden. I have watched everyone I ever loved grow old and die. I have seen civilizations rise and fall. I have carried this duty for so long that I can barely remember what it felt like to be free of it. Then why do you continue? He looked at her and she saw something ancient and tired in his glowing eyes. Because of moments like this, because of children laughing in streets that should have been ashes, because of scientists building wonders and artists creating beauty and farmers growing food for families they love, because every time I think the burden is too heavy, I see humanity reaching for the stars, and I remember why I was chosen. He turned back to the sky. The being that gave me this gift made me promise one thing before it died. It said, protect them until they are ready, until they no longer need a guardian, until they can stand among the stars as equals to any power in the galaxy. His eyes blazed brighter. That day will come. It may take 100 years or 1,000, but I will live to see it. And when it does, I will finally lay down my burden and rest. Yuna placed a hand on his arm. And until then, Park Tae, the lost guardian of Earth, smiled. It was the first real smile she had ever seen on his ancient face. Till then, let the galaxy know the truth. Let every empire and every tyrant and every force that threatens innocent lives hear these words and remember them well. He looked up at the stars, at the watching eyes of 1,000 nervous civilizations. Earth is not prey. Earth is not weak. Earth is protected by one who has stood against darkness since before your empires were born. And anyone who forgets this lesson, his eyes flared with the light of dying stars, will be reminded. Far across the galaxy, unconquered worlds, and in hidden places, the oppressed began to hope. The mighty began to fear. And a new age began, an age where one small blue world had announced its presence to the universe. Earth was no longer alone, and Earth would never bow again.